What is any movie without a wonderful cast of fan-favourite characters who audiences can root for? Great movies will invest viewers in the human beings behind the action and drama, fleshing them out as believable and relatable people in their own right. But for every iconic movie character with a riveting, well-known backstory, there are those whose origins are decidedly lesser known, with fans needing to dig deeper beyond the movie itself to discover the truth. With these 8 beloved movie characters, whether heroes or villains, there's more to them than meets the eye, as evidenced by their unexpected, shocking, and often downright horrifying backstories, as revealed by either the more expansive original source material or the cast and crew themselves. Naturally, it's up to individual viewers to decide for themselves whether or not they accept these revelations within their own headcanon, because a movie adaptation typically stands on its own 2 legs, doesn't it? But for the most part, these unsettling origin stories fold neatly enough into what we saw on the big screen. So with that in mind, I am Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 8 disturbing backstories behind your favourite movie characters. Number 8. Zeus tricked Hercules' mother into conceiving him. Content warning, sexual assault will be mentioned in this entry. Now, it's no secret that Disney has a habit of taking classical mythological stories and fairy tales and sanitizing them for younger audiences. Though in the case of their 1997 animation Hercules, they really had to do some cleaning up to make the original Greek myth palatable for the tots. You see, the original myth of Hercules' conception, or rather Heracles as he was then known, saw Zeus visit his own great-granddaughter Alcmene disguised as her husband Amphitryon. The two spent 3 whole days rutting, producing Hercules in the process. Now, a very charitable reading of this would say that Zeus seduced Alcmene, but this is quite obviously a case of rape by deception. He assumed the identity of her husband in order to get into her pants, and to make matters worse, made her son a product of rape. This was of course entirely reworked for the animation. Zeus and Hera were a happily married couple who conceived Hercules, while Alcmene became his adoptive mother. For the tone and audience they were shooting for, it was certainly a necessary change, right? Number 7. Red murdered 3 people, The Shawshank Redemption. How can you not love Red from The Shawshank Redemption, eh? The kindly prisoner who befriends Shawshank's newest inmate, Andy Dufresne, is the epitome of wisdom and weathered charm. Even accepting the fact he straight up admits he's in prison for murder, and freely confesses he's the only guilty man in Shawshank. But in Stephen King's original 1982 novella, the full extent of Red's actions are explained. He's actually serving 3 life sentences for murdering his wife, his neighbor's wife, and also his neighbor's son. Oh boy. As a young, stupid kid, as he puts it, Red cut the brakes of his wife's car in order to claim the insurance money upon her death, but didn't count on her picking up extra passengers on the way home. Oops. It's easy to appreciate why the movie opted to omit the specifics of Red's detainment, because let's face it, it'd be a whole lot tougher to sympathize with the guy knowing what he actually did. Instead, let's just pretend it was a drunken bar fight or something, yeah? Let's just do that. Is this the best Morgan Freeman performance of all time? Well, if it's not, you let me know what is in the comment section down below. Number 6. Bruce Banner killed his own father for killing his mother. The Hulk's formative years have never been depicted on screen in a significant way, with his origin story typically being defined by his fateful exposure to gamma radiation, transforming Bruce Banner into the big green guy. But in the comics, Bruce has a complex and deeply unsettling backstory that even predates his own existence. His father, Brian, initially intended not to have children out of the belief that he had a quote-unquote monster gene, due to the abusive nature of his relationship with his own father. But Brian got his wife Rebecca pregnant regardless, and in the throes of alcoholism was physically abusive towards both his wife and son. This led to Rebecca attempting to leave with Bruce, and Brian killing Rebecca by smashing her head against a pavement, right in front of Bruce no less. Brian then pressured Bruce into defending him during the trial, allowing him to initially escape prosecution. 15 years later, however, Brian was released from a mental institution into Bruce's care, and on the anniversary of Rebecca's death, the two got into an altercation at the gravesite, leading to Brian's head being smashed onto his dead wife's gravestone, killing him. Bruce then repressed the memory of killing his own father, convincing himself that Brian was murdered by muggers instead. While Ang Lee's 2003 Hulk film did integrate some aspects of Bruce's fraught past, even casting Nick Nolte as his troubled father, David, it stopped far short of delivering the full-on grim-dark origin story from the comics, and understandably so. Number 5, the Tin Man was a human forced to dismember himself, the Wizard of Oz. Though you probably crack a smile when you think of the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz, Victor Fleming's classic movie heavily sanitized the character's backstory from L. Frank Baum's novels. Prepare yourself. Originally, the Tin Man was a regular human, a woodsman named Nick Chopper. What a name. And in order to stop him marrying his sweetheart, the Wicked Witch of the East cursed his axe, causing it to progressively chop off all of his limbs. Lovely. The severed appendages were then consequently replaced with tin by the local tinsmith. All except for his heart, of course. Dang. It sounds more like the origins of RoboCop than a delightful character from one of the most iconic and crowd-pleasing fantasy movies of all time. The book goes into extensively queasy detail about poor Chopper's dismemberment, so it's little surprise the family-friendly cinematic equivalent opted to leave that part out. I would have been scarred for life as a kid. But on the other hand, wouldn't an R-rated body horror origin story for the Tin Man be kind of amazing? I think it kinda would. I'm a weirdo. Thank you very much for spending some time with us here at What Culture Today. And if you're enjoying this list right here, then tap that subscribe button down below, and guess what? You'll get more. It's just what happens. Number 4, Forrest Gump's dad was crushed to death by a crate of bananas. Forrest Gump is perhaps one of the most likable characters in cinema history, played to Oscar-winning perfection by Tom Hanks, as a sweet testament to the fact that brains aren't everything, people, trust me. And while Robert Zemeckis' film has plenty of fringe darkness to it, it's still a decidedly more sentimental and easygoing story compared to Winston Groom's 1986 source novel of the same name. This is especially true in terms of Forrest's youth, and the curious case of his father, who in the movie is simply said to be on vacation by Forrest's mother, but in the book, Mr. Gump is killed in an industrial accident while working on the docks, being crushed to death by a half-ton crate of bananas. While explaining the incident, Forrest says his father was flat as a pancake, and a hell of a mess. That's one way of putting it. Now, on one hand, that is totally horrifying, but on the other, it is mildly hilarious too. Yes, I'm going to hell. Content warning, this next entry will mention sexual assault. Number 3, Freddy Krueger was a product of gang rape and Nightmare on Elm Street. The apparent origin story of a Nightmare on Elm Street antagonist, Freddy Krueger, is well known to fans both casual and hardcore. Freddy Krueger was a child killer who, after being acquitted on a technicality, was hunted down by a mob of angry parents and burned to death, his spirit living on in the nightmares of teenagers ever since. But there's much more to it than that, folks, as revealed in the third film, Dream Warriors. The threequel revealed that Freddy's mother, Amanda Krueger, was a young nurse working at an asylum who was accidentally locked in a room harboring the asylum's most dangerous criminals. Over the weekend, Amanda was raped repeatedly and only barely clinging to life when discovered, but also pregnant with Freddy. And this is why the child murderer is commonly referred to as the son of 100 homicidal maniacs, given the ambiguous and horrifying nature of his parentage. Number 2, the cars killed off all the humans. Cars. Now, this entry comes with the slight caveat that it hasn't been officially confirmed as story canon by Pixar. But given that it came from the mouth of the Cars series creative director Jay Ward, we are taking it, folks. During press for Cars 3 back in 2017, Ward was asked about the absence of humans in the franchise, and offered up a surprisingly comprehensive answer. Ward said, "If you think about this, we have autonomous car technology coming in right now. It's getting to the point where you can sit back in the car and it drives itself. Imagine in the near future when the cars keep getting smarter and smarter, and after one day they just go, why do we need human beings anymore? They're just slowing us down. It's just extra weight. Let's get rid of them." But the car takes on the personality of the last person who drove it. Whoa, there you go. Furthermore, Ward added that Pixar's Bible for the Cars franchise has a number of restrictions on what the filmmakers can do, adding you'll never see the doors open because the brain and the eyes are in there. We don't want anything falling out of the side. Gnarly. And though it remains to be seen whether or not Cars 4 will ever actually happen, over $10 billion in merchandise revenue says probably, it's now impossible to look at these light, frothy animated films in quite the same easygoing light ever again. So you're welcome for that. And number 1, Quasimodo's parents switched him with a quote-unquote normal baby. The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Disney's animated film The Hunchback of Notre Dame is, unsurprisingly, a major tonal and storytelling divergence from Victor Hugo's 1831 novel of the same name. And while this is apparent throughout, the squeaky clean sanitization is perhaps felt no stronger than in its cleaned up, though still quite depressing, depiction of Hunchback protagonist Quasimodo's origins. In the movie, Quasimodo is born to a Romani mother who is killed by Judge Claude Frollo, and in order to atone for his crime, Frollo reluctantly raises Quasimodo in Notre Dame. As for the book, Quasimodo is similarly born to a Romani tribe, but his parents aren't quite so accepting of his physical deformities, actually switching him with a quote-unquote normal baby girl named Agnes. After Agnes's mother realizes this and believes her baby has been eaten by the Romani, Quasimodo is cast out. In Paris, Quasimodo is adopted by Frollo, who appoints him the bell ringer of the Notre Dame de Paris, or Paris if you will. And the loud ringing of the bells ultimately causes Quasimodo to become deaf, another facet missing from the Disney movie. The animated version is hardly all sunshine and rainbows either, though Hugo's novel is decidedly bleaker and more hard-edged. From its grim origin story for Quasimodo through to its devastating finale, where Quasimodo cradles Esmeralda's corpse until he dies of starvation. Yep, probably a wise move cutting that out. Yep, that was a good call.